Okay, welcome back. You're watching Morning Prime, and what you can see on your screen is an article from the Sunday Standard done by Kisumu Governor Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, where he asks, is parliamentary system Kenya's only antidote to political crisis we have faced? And he poses two critical questions, which I'll just read for the sake of our viewers and our panelists right here. First, what type of political system do we need to help us avoid this periodical political crisis that we have had after every presidential election since 2002? And second, the 2010 constitution under which we are governing ourselves today was meant to create a framework for good democratic governance in our nation. Why has it failed us at every presidential election since then? So he raises critical questions on what he questions is the root cause of our political problems, and he says is the authoritarianism of the presidential system. An interesting article right there that was on the Sunday Standard, yesterday's copy, and we just want to interrogate it with the analyst I have in studio, because governance is their forte and politics as well. As you come in, Odoyowidi, it would be proper to note a comment that was given by Ahmed Nasir on this particular article. He says, and he disagrees with Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, where he says Kenya's sole political crisis is a Raila crisis. He zones in on that particular issue, saying any study on Kenya's political crisis will show an irrefutable empirical reality that the common denominator is one individual. So whether we adopt parliamentary or presidential system, we might have a 5-year cycle of crisis as long as Raila is a factor in our politics. What makes sense?
Yeah. I was in Nyanza the whole day and returned to Wilson late in the night and went to sleep. But Ahmed Nasir has exactly the same answer I would be having. The crisis in Kenyan politics after every election, including the ones in which he is part of the government, is Raila Amolo Odinga. He is the creator of all these crises after every election. When we went to the 2002 election, in which he was part of that government of Kibaki, he rebelled on day one. And I know why he does the rebellion on day one, to hold his stronghold together. When you fight nationally, you can get away with murder regionally. When you create an external war, there is cohesion internally. And Raila Odinga's intention has never been to become the president of the Republic of Kenya. He only goes to vie for the presidency so that he can pull his stronghold of Luo Nyanza together. That is his country of 6 million people, the size of Denmark, where he rules over them like a, I don't know, I've forgotten how it is called, but that is where he lords over them. In fact, they have made him now to live above the law. Today he can commit small crimes and nobody would dare even arrest him, and he loves it. So this idea of a presidential system or whatever system about solving the crisis is Raila Odinga. When he quits politics or gets out of the scene, we will not have this crisis that we have after every election. The bottom line in crisis in Kenya after every election is Raila Odinga. Check it. It is in the history books. It is in your pages. It is in your libraries. You know, if we reduce problems to an individual, yes, then we're in trouble. We can't solve it. We need to see the weaknesses of our presidential system against the weaknesses of parliamentary system. Okay. And then the strength of our presidential system against the strength of parliamentary system. Right. Then we can determine, given our circumstances, which one fits us. Okay, Raila may have his weaknesses, but Raila is not going to be here forever. Correct. It's only Kenya that will be here forever. Correct. So we can't reduce the problem we are facing to Raila Odinga or to William Ruto or to Uhuru Kenyatta. We need to look at it in sustainability concept. Okay. So Anyang' Nyong'o is arguing that given our tribalism, if we set up two centers of power, we have a president and we have a prime minister, because I think in the end, we can't have a pure parliamentary system. We also don't work.
just like the pure presidential system is not working. So we may have to have a hybrid, so that there is two centers, okay? So that when I appoint you, somebody else can say that is this one more qualified than this one. You understand? You are not the only voice. Yeah. So the presidential system is failing us because also of our culture. You see in America, you can see right now what is happening. The house is controlled by the opposition. But when there is an issue, like now they have a budgetary issue about to default, the president will get the speaker. Because that speaker owns the power by controlling the vote in that house. And they will all agree because it's a matter of national interest. So our inability to put the country first challenges our presidential system seriously. Because we are not able to put the country back. First, we are not able to put our Kenya first, so that the country when we make a decision, we don't look at you. We look at the country, the benefit or the disadvantage it may bring. We are not there. Now, the parliamentary system is also an unstable system. British have had almost 3 or 4 governments in less than 2 years, but peacefully. Yeah. Will that happen here? If we change them that quickly here, how is that going to affect us? So we need to think about these things carefully, and they put structures, because there's the parliamentary system, this system we're having in our presidential, would have worked if, when actualizing the law, the constitution, because remember the constitution is heavy on inclusivity. But there is no enabling legislation with appropriate punishment when that does not occur. Because you see, the Constitution is policy statement, union policy statement. The enabling legislation is supposed to guarantee that is not violated. We don't have that. So we have ingrained weaknesses, and that's why it's important that maybe we have a national conference. Like opposition is saying, the president should go further. And they say that's not just a negotiation between the two of us. Could we have a national convention to have a look at the weakness, to audit the 2010 constitution, because now it's approaching some 15 years, to see how it can be improved and whether we need it. Because what Anyang is talking is about a new one totally different. Maybe the Kilifi or the work on draft, which is discarded in Naivasha in favor of this one. Instead of taking that route, first we audit this one. We see where we are failing and how we can improve it. If then it's not possible to improve, then we can now think about a new one. So we need to think without individuals. That way we are able to address our problem.
Yeah, actually on this particular matter, and Professor Nyong'o was part of the process, and I agree with both the panelists here. The parliamentary system has always been on the table. And in fact, Nyong'o's party is the one that has been pushing for it. ODM has always pushed for a parliamentary system, even before the 2010 constitution.
Even Naivasha it was put in.
Exactly. It's always been there. And this has been rejected by again, groups and parties that favor a presidential system. And the system that we have today was a system that was actually agreed on, by Kenyans and both parties, and voted in. Myself, I'm on a lot of issues, I'm quite conservative. I don't like this idea where every day you change, and you change everything. We need to work, as Naituli is saying, we need to audit and then say what is functioning and what isn't functioning. Let me start the other way around. I look at Kenya and the Kenyan constitution, and I ask myself, what is the good thing that all Kenyans agree on? Is devolution. That is actually, in fact, I think that's the closest we came to reconciling ethnic, tribal interests with national interests, where we're saying, look here, each of the regions will be able to actually develop, and regardless of the systems that we have in place. So we are saying, fine, whatever system we have, devolution, we agree, is actually our working system exactly well. The question is, what are these vagaries of the presidential system that we need to address? And is it possible to address them within this particular system? And what are these merits of parliamentary system that we need to build on? And is it possible to build on them with the current system that the Kenyan government actually have? This whole idea of just coping outside there blindly does actually not work. I did take governors from this country to Sweden to look at another system. Yeah, because I'm actually quite convinced that the American presidential system is ill-suited for countries like ours. Similarly, as Professor Naituli has highlighted, and Electoral here, the British parliamentary system is also too unstable for, again, countries like ours. And Kenya already has something very unique that we must give ourselves credit for. This is a system that doesn't exist anywhere in Africa. It doesn't. In fact, when you tell people about the devolution in Kenya and governors and so on, it doesn't exist. Tell me which other country in Africa has this. And this is a system that we arrived at, through consensus. Yes, there are some things we didn't like about it, but we said, look here, this can actually do. Back to my Swedish story. The reason why I convinced the ambassador to take these governors there was to see a system that is not, that has elements of both. But then the core of this system has to do with the people, the services. And it's a pretty interesting system because it's a flexible system. The ordinary person does not know which level of government offers which service. What happens is that national government, regional governments, and even local governments, all of them focus on the service. So you have situations where a government says, no, we don't have the capacity to do education. Then education automatically goes to national government. Government of Stockholm, for example, which is a local government, can offer literally all services, from security to issues of health, to issues of transport and sanitation and so on. And they actually, they get those and they offer them competently. Right. So it's about competencies within different levels of government to serve the mwananchi, if I can actually put it that way. All that the mwananchi is looking at is actually service. And I think that's possible within our current framework. For me, one of the biggest things, and of course, if we do have this constitutional conference, I hope I'll be there to make this particular point, that what we should be looking at is service. And who's offering this service? And then give them the requisite budget for it. Because now what we have is a situation where we're saying we actually have these devolved functions to counties. And then meanwhile, Raila, when he's in a good mood, says counties should have 36%. Why 36%? On the other side, some member of parliament says, oh, counties should have 7% of that. Why 7%? This is a sort of abstraction, emotional dealing with very scientific things that can be proven scientifically. We know the quantum of services that the counties are actually engaging in. And as Odoye was saying, our parliamentarians should be sitting there to say, these are the services the counties are offering. This is the portion of the budget that they need to offer those services. Otherwise, we reduce those services, therefore, so that then they can offer fewer services more competently. Absolutely. But now we have a situation where counties, in fact, they're just paying their staff. There's no service they're offering or whatever, and blaming the center. So I think there are very interesting opportunities that we need to look at, instead of having this inferiority complex. I did tell the former President Uhuru Kenyatta that part of the problem that we have in this country is that we have inferiority complex at national level. Instead of being proud of ourselves, instead of looking at what we've been able to achieve, instead of telling people we are a great nation indeed, although with many, many problems, and instead of getting this particular human resource and starting to deal with those problems, we run away from them, and then you come up with the article like the one of Nyong'o saying, look here, let's burn our houses and build a better house. That is the way to actually bring poverty to your village. Instead of saying, my mother's house is leaking, why can't I go and fetch some thatch so that I can repair that house and then buy my mother furniture so that the house is even more comfortable. What we say is that, no, because the other guys built the house, let's burn it so that we can build a house like Odoye with his house. And we can afford it.
Okay.
Let me add something on devolution.
One of the greatest weaknesses in this Katiba was actually for the national government to be forced to fund recurrent expenditure in the counties. That should never have happened. The national government should only have funded development.
Correct.
Because if you remember the county councils, when they were existing, they were even paying different salaries according to their means. Yeah. Okay, so national government should only fund development in the counties, but never recurrent.
These are very
Let the counties
I agree
fund their recurrent. That way they will be innovative, they will be creative.
They'll have leaner government.
Exactly. Yeah. Right now they are just waiting for the money from the national government. It's other people's money. And then if they are employed, they have become employment in bureaus.
Exactly.
This is an area which need to be revisited also.
Mine was even more radical on the devolution. I was even thinking that devolution is a very good vehicle driven very badly.
Exactly.
We have a scenario here where governors these days tend to work on their headquarters.
Yes.
Because most of these countries
They are
are
in
named
Nairobi.
headquarters.
Correct.
Homa Bay, Migori, Kisumu, Siaya,
they've decentralized.
Kakamega. So you go to Kisumu, it is the 6th cleanest city in Africa. But Kisumu County
but
also hosts
but go outside.
Katito,
Correct.
which is the dirtiest town in Kenya.
In Africa.
Katito.
Yes.
So you see, so they concentrate here.
Exactly.
And
It's re-centralization.
you look for a county which in the last 10 years has got like 50 billion. Take even 5 billion there to go to development.
Yes.
You will never find any development there worth 5 billion.
Yes.
Exactly.
Even if you try to see a road was built here, is no longer there, you will never get. So this is a very good vehicle, driven very badly. I would have agreed with you even further to say what we could have done in devolution. We could have devolved funds and not governments.
Exactly.
Let the funds go to help the people,
Yeah.
and let it be managed by some people who also can be controlled how they
A technical.
they manage it. So the government says we are going to send 4 billion to Homa Bay this year for development.
Right.
What are the development projects?
Yeah.
Which is the committee going to oversee the implementation? Then it is implemented. But here we have devolved engineers, we have devolved corruption agents, we have devolved brokers, we have devolved everything. Even we have devolved mini presidents.
Yeah. You remember in that conversation, the reason why we didn't have councillors.
Yes.
And we said, let's not have councillors. The reason why we're saying governors should be technical people who have actually, of course, running through political office, but people who have demonstrated competence in running organizations and so on, was because of that fear, actually. And I think, again, like you say correctly, managed badly. Because the thinking generally was that that county level will be a technical level that basically offers services. But then what we've done is to reverse it and actually turn it into a purely political level as opposed to a technical level. And the technical is disappeared. Myself here, I feel very hurt that mayors were removed and councillors were removed because those are the ones who run cities and towns.
Yes.
But now imagine you remove those guys and then you replace them with MCAs who are even worse politicians and they're not even answerable directly, to the people who elect.
See, the way we could have achieved that, in my opinion, is to have MCAs elected, but then to have governors advertised.
Yes.
Okay, interviewed by the Public Service Commission.
Yes.
And then appointed by the president and confirmed by parliament.
Yes.
So that in Meru, for example, you will have a governor who is from Luo Nyanza. This guy doesn't have a clan here. Okay,
Yes.
His job is purely to execute
Yes.
the development project.
Absolutely.
Once we went that route, it would be better today than we are now.
And what is he executing?
When we got the local governor.
I agree with you, Prof. What is he executing? That is now what the MCAs are
Want.
developing that side.
Yes.
The
From
MCAs
there.
then develop the budget, they develop the plans and so on. But the person executing it is not bringing these charlatans and funny relatives.
Because
governors
these
now
are technograts elected
have
nationally.
people who have a lot of political, they want to become bigger than where they are today. Yeah. They have ambition.
But also some of them collect their clans around them.
Yes.
They do all what they want, then they are defendant.
Correct.
They have defense.
Yeah.
So the government, somebody who came from Nairobi, will not have any of that. You will not be incumbent.
Look at a basic issue. We had Kabogo here. Kabogo brings KRA.
Yeah.
The Kiambu revenue goes 300%. We were Nderitu. Nderitu brings KRA. The collection goes 300%. Now, ask yourself, all governors in Kenya know, now there's no county being managed by KRA. All governors in Kenya know that if you bring KRA, your revenue will shoot up 300, 400%. Why aren't they doing it? They're not doing it because they want to steal.
They want that.
They would rather the county suffers and the nation suffers. They would rather collect 20%
So-
of what is due to them,
so
as
we
long
didn't-
as they can steal it.
If the governor has
Yeah.
posted you to revenue collection,
Yeah.
every
It's
evening you
yeah.
bring a few million.
So the
That
point
what
is,
you do.
we need to revisit all this.
The counties should be made to collect their recurrent expenditures.
Yeah.
Yes.
If they can't do it,
Simple.
let them
No,
do
that's their problem.
with the staff they can pay with
Correct.
whatever little they
Yeah,
collect.
yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Let them steal the money and there'll be no money to pay the staff. So that then we can close
But
them.
you give them the money to pay staff,
Yeah.
you give them money to do development,
Yeah.
they use all of it to pay staff and
Exactly.
embezzle it.
And they don't care whether,
I think
whether
that's
they
why we
loot or
need to
they steal or whatever it is.
revisit.
Because
That's why we
they
need to
know money
revisit
will
this
come from
Katiba
them.
now.
Right.
We need to
Yes.
revisit it. We need to see where we have succeeded, where we have failed, how can we improve
Correct.
on our operations.
But a statement on
Yeah.
that opinion by Kisumu
yeah.
governor.
Yeah.
You are saying I was reducing it to one man, but again I was looking at why did he write it? It is the current crisis and maybe another one which he had seen a little earlier. However, I do agree with you. We need to look at it wider. But as I can tell you, nothing seemed to work for Kenya. Because we create our own crisis
Yes.
and we struggle to solve them, yet we have one of the most robust constitutions in the world.
Exactly.
We have a serious constitution. In fact, Kenya is over-legislated. It
That
is
is
our
true.
bad
That
manners
is
that
true.
put us in this crisis.
Very, very true.
Our bad manners.
Speaking of crisis, let's talk about the current political crisis
Right.
we're facing, all to do with the bipartisan parliamentary talks. And last week, we talk about political goodwill, and it seems to have been there last week, where we had the opposition call off the protest despite putting up a couple of ultimatums. These talks should conclude within 30 days. Equally, they want these talks expanded, not just within Parliament, but outside Parliament, sort of what Professor was hinting at right here. But what do you make about the bipartisan process right now? Many might argue that issuing ultimatums when it comes to such a process might be, shooting ourselves in our own foot even before it begins. First of all, from the political goodwill side, are we gotten it?
It is very important to look at the various reasons that has informed the forming of this bipartisan team.
Yeah.
That none of that was necessary because there are things that we could have tried to solve within the law and within Parliament, and if they fail, then that is when we should have gone to the streets. But again, we have a crisis because we refuse to obey the very laws that we put. You remember in the last Parliament, the appointment of the Cherera 4 was done by a law that was in the books. And we knew very well it was being controlled by the handshake government, and nobody complained. Today, they are complaining that they see that IEBC or commissioners will be appointed in such a way that will favor the government of the day. The other reason is mambo ya chakula.
Cost of living.
There is very little the government can do to bring down the cost of food other than the long-term process of providing seeds, providing fertilizer. Why do I say so? If you were to subsidize every bag of unga in this country, the 2 kilograms ones, you are going to pay 100 so that the consumer also pays 100. And we have 50 million Kenyans. Probably 40 of them survive on ugali. And one person would take a week or less with that bag. When you do that math, you find you are going to use a quarter of usable tax collected on that. And again, what will happen? Kenyans, rich ones like Omenya and me, we will go and buy bags and keep in the house. Some people will even buy and retail again. So I think the best way to go to this was the route that the president had taken. And these many other things. Why the opposition is becoming very stubborn on this? Because for the very first time, protesters have been treated very well on the ground. I saw in 2013, the slums were so blockaded that you could not even get out to get and look for food. After the 2013.
2017, not the 13. 13, there was no demonstration.
No, there were no, because they were blocked. They could not even get to the highways. So was 2017. But President William Ruto has treated them very well. I can tell you for free, if I was in charge of that, they would have not left their offices to go into the slums and cause the protests in the slums. You know what we had this time in terms of protest were not Kenyans who came to the streets to protest, to demonstrate. It was the leaders. There's new leaders who went, the first time they went to Isili, and then they went to Madare. The second time they went to Kawangware, and they went to Kibera. The third time they went into Imaradaima and went to Mukuru.
I think
so they go where the people live, right in front of their houses and businesses, and that is where they cause the protest.
I think the question...
However, if they were blocked, so they are feeling that they are succeeding in bringing the president to do their bidding, and I think they are getting it wrong.
So from where you sit,
yes.
these issues, all of them, I think
all
there are
of
like
them.
4 issues, they will not be addressed through this bipartisan...
Kenya is in the streets for very flimsy reasons. When they say they are calling back the protest, and we went back to another one, just because there was one Adan Kinan, they didn't want to be on that team. If Adan Kinan belonged to KK, and he has been belonged to them, and he has been appointed by KK, then it meant they had 8 people, and people had 6. They should have just accepted it,
I think that being rather simplistic.
Because it was a simple thing to go to the streets for.
I think what the question really should be that whether there is legitimacy, not even the process of demonstrations.
Yes.
Whether what they're asking is legit. When I see them saying that let's have party discipline, I think that's something we should want for Kenya.
That's legit.
Okay. That is legit.
An audit of the 2022
and it can be handled by the law.
No, you see, there are some things which are neither here nor there.
Exactly.
But when they talk about reforming IMBC, that again is legit. IMBC needs to be reformed because we have had this complaint for a long time. And my friend here is saying that when they were forming that commission, there was no complaint. I wish there was a complaint then. Because the fact that there was no complaints and give us a very short commission.
Yes, correct.
Okay? And give us relatives
and
of
and we know what happened.
And give us Anyang Nyong.
And we know what happened because there was no position.
Let's not drop names. But what happened? What happened is if you trace the handshake, if you look at the handshake, the one was relatives of the leaders.
Yeah.
You understand?
Okay.
Now, if someone complains,
deliver?
we may have gotten Ngundi Kenyans who would have even explained that the election was free and fair and tell the country that whoever doesn't agree, this is a danger to us. Okay? But you got fairly weak fellows,
correct,
if you ask me, because walking away, I don't know, that was supposed to solve our problem, walking away from going to Serena. So, for the fact that there was no complaint, it was bad for Kenya. There shouldn't have been a complaint in that process. So, people are complaining and they want this process to be done indifferently. You need to support them. So there is a legitimacy.
Right.
Now there is also legitimacy when you talk about the cost of living.
Yep.
Okay, it's not really true that the government can do nothing. If we put a subsidy is useless.
Yeah.
Government cannot subsidize.
It's not possible.
No, subsidies is hopeless.
It's not possible.
But there is something this government can do, and it can do with clever device. This government can remove taxes on all input to agriculture and allow Kenyans to grow food for themselves.
Right.
Okay? Just like in energy. You see, the energy costs continue rising.
Right.
You will not grow the economy with the rising energy costs.
Exactly.
People will continue running away from manufacturing, going where the energy is cheaper. Removing taxes on energy.
Right.
We will expand production, increase employment, and bring more revenue to the tax revenue to the government. So the government can do without device in most of these areas. Because we see, you see, the moment we close ourselves and see the troublemaker and associate every problem with this Raila Odinga, we will not solve these problems. We need to separate the problem from individuals, however bad they are. However bad we think. We separate the problem with them and then address the problem independently. You see, our problem are not really big. It's our assumption in our end that's big. You know, there's a question we put to our students when you try to educate them how to approach a problem. You go to a management class and you ask them how they would hit an elephant. The first thing is the students see that big thing with the arms and they can't actually tell you how they can eat it. Okay? Simple thing is you eat an elephant the way you eat anything else. Piece by piece. This is how problems are solved. Problems are supposed to be solved piece by piece. So there is a very good formula where you can get this IBC thing totally indisputable. There is no reason why a polling station in Pokot should send its result to Nairobi. In other words, we should never be having these servers you are talking about. What we should be having at the National Tallying Center is 47 entries from 47 counties. In other words, we ground the entire thing to the constituency. So all the polling stations, the data is collected at the constituency, period. And the constituency moves their 11 or 9 or 7 figures to the county. And then the county sends to Nairobi. So if you have a problem with the Sana constituency, you go down there and recount those entire boxes.
Okay.
You understand? So it's very easy if we want to do the right thing. And that's why I'm saying, if you look at the Simeo phone demands, they are going to move the Kenyan forward. We should not dismiss them. What we do is, any question raised, he needs to be addressed without looking at the person raising the question.
So, before you cross over to Menya, on expanding these talks outside Parliament, what's the merit?
So the merit, what they are saying is that they are just saying they don't trust Parliament because it's controlled by William Ruto. But also, to be fair to them, there is no discussion in Kenya which has actually ever taken place in the Parliament. The IPPNG, the Inter-Party Parliamentary Group, was formed at Safari Park. Well, the discussion finished in Safari Park, then they were brought to Parliament for ratification. Okay? Even in the Kofi Annan process, it finished in Zarenda, then it was taken to Parliament for ratification. So this is what these people mean. They mean that once you agree the parliamentary process, then you are subject to parliamentary standing orders. You are subject to the Speaker breaking the deadlock wherever there is one. What they are saying is let the parties in the contest, UNDA and Simeo, break the deadlock outside the Parliament. And then you proceed with it. That's what they are saying. Okay. So for me, I'm a very flexible person. And I think to create peace, we need to respect the opinion and then prove the opinion wrong.
Right or wrong.
Yes, you see, but first, you respect it. You don't put it together with this fellow we don't like.
Okay. Omenya, give us your take on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, when it comes to the partisan talks, in terms of the deadlock, really, I'm on the same page with the Doyo, that actually, and in the issues, because for the first time, we really have a deadlock over nothing. Put differently, it is really about politicians and their interests not being met. And to me, this is a pity because, and I've said that over again in these stations, that it would be interesting to see how we organize our politics beyond Parliament. These same politicians, when they're campaigning, they're always going to the people and trying to explain to themselves to the people. But we know that once they get into power, the only time they go to the people is to hold the government to the day at ransom. This should be a normal habit of political parties, creating spaces and systems where wananchi can ventilate, where experts can ventilate, and so on. This is actually quite important, quite interesting. And these can yield results. These will actually yield results. I'm involved in a process that's not fully political, but it's quasi-political, funded by the British government, FCDO. And we've been working with 12 counties and trying to find out what is blocking investments in these counties and how those could be unlocked, actually. And the way that process has been designed is such that we talk to the political leaders, but we also talk to the people. And we also scientifically document what people are doing there economically. Of course, it's focused on economics. It's not focused on politics. And they generate, out of this, the politicians themselves and the people then generate their own priorities in terms of the sort of investments, that would be happening in those particular places. And yes, I mean, and I'm telling you, things happening. Kisii the other day, the avocado factory is up. We're talking about food processing factory and fish in Kilifi. That's already taken off. In Isiolo, the abattoir and meat processing is taking place and so on. How has that actually happened? It has happened after talking to these people. Is now when you move, and I will look at that as a political component, where now we move to the investors and ask them, why did you close your factories? That's the Manyang that is talking here. Kisumu closed. In fact, there's no functional fish factory in Kisumu. Kisumu closed 16 fish factories in the last 10 years. There's none. in Kisumu. Unfortunately, that's not one of the areas that we are actually working on. We meet the private sector and ask them, why aren't you investing in these places? And there seem to be so much production. In Makueni here, there are so many mangoes. What are you doing with these things? In Kilifi, there's so much fish. You know, we can do tanneries around there and so on. We ask these people, what is the problem? And believe it or not, in all the instances, the biggest problem is a government that is the obstacle. In the first instance, they're doing nothing to encourage these investors to come in. Number two, when it comes to doing their own investments as government, they're putting investments where their relatives are rather than places that can grow their counties economically. And these are the sort of conversations that we're having, because private sector is saying, if there's a road in this place, if there's power in this place, we'll come and actually build the factory. Then, of course, the other big thing, of course, that we didn't want to talk about here is actually taxes. The reason why I'm illustrating that at a micro level is that it's actually possible for a government that's listening to create these systems and structures and spaces where they can actually, get our collective wisdom and get the wisdom of the ordinary people and get the wisdom of the private sector and even of the politicians. And we're able to move the country forward. And that's partly why these people are elected, to harness the best that is in all of us. And to me, that's why these sort of talks, these sort of conversations should be happening, not because we have a crisis. Of course, the crisis forces them to actually happen. But they should be happening as part of a normal habit of our culture. Those same Azimio guys, they also have issues that they should be discussing. They've got counties that they control. What's happening in those counties? What are the issues? What are the agendas and so on? And yes, the only time we hear there's some public consultation is to rubber stamp those same budgets that we're actually talking about. That translates nothing on the ground. We can, and it's possible to improve our governance. And part of it is political mischief will always be there. And people will always throw spanners in the works and so on. Yeah. But to me, that sort of engagement is healthy political culture. And the only thing we need to figure out is to do it in a way that doesn't create instability in our country. But for me, I'm happy when Azimio is not demonstrating, when Azimio is negotiating with government over issues there. I'm quite happy. When Azimio, Kenya Kwanza, members of parliament go and engage the public, I'm actually quite happy, because that is the political culture that will bring us stability in this country and eventually, give us progress.
Okay, gentlemen, yeah.
While I agree with Prof about solving these issues outside Parliament, then taking it in, I also must tell you that there is no crisis. I have looked at these things one by one. For example, open the server. There was the minor Kiai ruling.
Yeah.
But which was I never talked about opening the server.
No,
so,
those are the
examples.
See, that's the reason why we. No, I didn't say so. But that's the reason why.
I agree with you.
What I'm trying to explain is we have no reasons to even have a talk in the very first place. Because just we leave it there. This idea of opening the server. It was agreed that the presidential votes will be counted at the polling station and it will end there.
Right.
Because there were 6 from 34A. Each presidential candidate would get one. Yeah. One would be pinned on the door, and another one will be taken to Bomas. Right. And it is from that one that the tally will be taken and will be announced by the returning officer, not the commission. Right. It will be announced by the returning officer.
Right.
So to come and tell us to open the server, what is in that server that you want to see? When the presidential results were declared from physical, from 34A, the original one that was sent to Bomas. What are we going to look for in the server? Even if we found the server was inconsistent with this, each of those 4 parties who participated could interfere with that server.
But also the Supreme Court had done a sample of the server. I think of the server one,
yes.
Of course,
and they chose
a useless
18 polling stations, and none of them produced from 34A that it was inconsistent with what is in the server.
Right.
I remember Professor Smoking Wanjala asked Azimio, can you produce one from 34A out of the 46,232 that is different from what is in the server? They never produced. Today, they are telling us to open the server. Not us, not you, not him. They are telling the electors in the village who have nothing. They think server ni nyungu. I hear Raila is calling it nyungu, where the votes were put in, so open it so that we can see who won.
On the server one, I think let me put my voice on this so that at least we are clear again.
Let me
and on this one I agree. Look, the IBC put all those Form 34As online, and
Yes.
everybody had them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think, to be fair here to government, what I want to be hearing from Azimio is that these many forms were inconsistent with the forms that we had.
Kabisa.
Really, it's that simple to say, out of the how many were there?
46,000.
Out of the 46,000, we have 2,000 forms.
Yes.
That are inconsistent with what was announced at the polling station.
Okay.
But what we hear from Azimio, which in fact is my party, is that there's a guy called Jose Camago who's hiding in the servers. So once the servers are opened, this guy will be arrested, and then this matter will rest. So for me, it's a non-issue.
It's a non-issue.
The server is a non-issue. On the other hand, I think, and again, I'm on the same page with Owidi, that I agree and disagree that actually some of the issues being raised are not a crisis of the nature that they're being raised. But on the other hand, I think that we have matters that are being raised by Azimio that require national dialogue. I really believe that we have issues that require national dialogue because, and some of them are basic issues. It is just that government economic plan, for example, food security and so on. We're saying, okay, fine, government as one way of approaching it. The Uhuru government, of course, had another way of, either approaching or creating the mess and so on. And we're saying, yeah, I mean, we do have issues where we may need national dialogue and a consensus.
Okay.
That same IBC, we know the mess that was caused in IBC. And I keep telling politicians, you put your incompetent relatives in place. They will not protect you. When the fight comes in, you need the most
clever
intelligent.
enough.
Let me pass this message to them. The reason why, and it's been proven, the reason why the most important function of the human brain is not logic, is survival. So you get the guys with the best brains if you want to survive. You get the guys with the most useless brains, you will not survive. And that is scientifically proven.
Okay.
Prof,
Final comments,
let me
gentlemen.
close
Final
it.
comments as
Let
we
me close it.
finalize.
So in actual sense,
Yeah.
none of those things should take us to the streets, not to any of those things.
That
Why
is
I
true.
talk like that?
That is true.
Because I don't see goodwill in this. When this thing began, if you remember, it began with the courts. That these courts, they have to reform, we have to... I said, what happened to the magistrates court in Kisii? This thing was done here at the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
What is Azimio saying? Then the Cherera 4. Then there's some whistleblower. It's just changing, metamorphosizing. Today it suddenly come to we don't want this idea of cannibalizing other political parties. So they are looking for something to take them to the streets. Because I told you, when there is a national battle, you can get away with murder regionally.
Interesting, gentlemen. So we'll definitely see how this particular conversation develops. And our time seems to be up. Thank you so much for the robust conversation. We haven't agreed on all the issues.
Yes.
But I want to assure the audience
We've agreed to
simply
debate.
friendly fire.
Exactly.
Friendly fire. At the end of the day, we might not agree ideologically, but we definitely are focused on the benefits it has for the country at large, not from an individualistic point of view. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your indulgence. Odoyo Owidi, who's the chair of the Lake Victoria South Water Works Development Authority. Asante sana for your time. Professor Alfred Omenya, always a pleasure to have you with us. And Professor Gitile Naituli, thank you for your time this morning. I hope you have a fantastic day, gentlemen. And to our audience, hope you're adequately informed about the latest news making headlines, what you can expect on today's edition of The Dailies. My name is Jesse Rogers. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good